Now, detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult the propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
It's difficult to fight an effective war when most of the soldiers in your army think that the enemy is imaginary. Watch this.
Oh, but you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Are you kidding me? Have you taken a close look at the eyes on this baby you're clutching so fervently to your breast? This baby's eyes are yellow and slanted and serpentine and feral. This is Rosemary's baby. What the heck is it doing in your tub?
Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. That was Joanna Michelson. She is one of the featured guests in a brand new film that is the topic of discussion today, the film called This Is a War. It features a number of other speakers, and including yours truly. We will talk with the filmmakers about the project, what the message of the project they hope to communicate, and of course where you can find it. They are the hosts of the YouTube program Through the Black. You'll find it online at throughtheblack.com, and the filmmakers behind a previous film that dealt with satanic ritual abuse and the reality of that horror, the film called Detestable. We welcome back to A View from the Bunker Tom Dunn and Jared Chrestman. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
And this is so cool to be back again. I can't believe we have something else to talk about. So thank you, Derek, for having us.
Well, no, I was honored to be in the film, and I was surprised when you released the trailer, the first tease for the film, This Is a War, back in June. And lo and behold, it was me. This was a session that we recorded at the Hear the Watchman conference in Dallas back in March. And you basically just turned a camera on and let me go, which is always a dangerous thing because as I've said before, my dad used to say, when you ask Derek for the time, he tells you how to build a watch. So, but I'm honored that you found a way to use the film, or use that footage in the film. The film, This Is a War. Jared, if you were just going to describe it, say the elevator pitch, how would you describe this 2-hour film?
I've told everybody that asks that it's really just a more elaborate episode of Through the Black. It covers a wide variety of topics, but it focuses on the serious nature of spiritual warfare and Jesus Christ being the answer.
That's pithy and to the point. Now, Tom, I was surprised in watching the film because most of the people in the film have a testimony that brings them a lot closer face to face with supernatural evil. I think me, like most of the people in the Christian church in America today, and I think the way I put it was this: we've been so dumbed down in our theology, we don't recognize evil when we see it anymore. In fact, I can pretty sure that's what I said because you put it on the back of the box. And again, I was honored that you thought that was worth using. But I think that's true for a lot of us Christians because we don't confront evil in a very spectacular or personal way anymore. It's sort of, low-grade evil. It's like, hey, fellas, it's okay to look, but as long as you don't touch, that kind of thing, So how did you go about finding and selecting the other guests that are featured in the film? And again, I mentioned Joanna Michelson, but J. Brett Prince, Jeremiah Dirt, Seth, and forgive me if I pronounce any of these names incorrectly, Seth Dreyer, Matt Miraz, and Mark Salinas.
Salinas, right.
Salinas, okay. Yeah, like Salinas, California, duh. How did your paths cross with those folks, and how did what were you trying to accomplish with the interviews you conducted with them?
Well, the thing about this film is this film happened on our way to making another film. We set out back last fall, almost a year ago, just raising support for a sequel that we're going to make to Detestable. and some things happened along the way. And the idea behind it was we were going to travel to California to do some interviews. And, you know, just cost of traveling and being out there and time away from family, I thought, well, I want to really, you know, capitalize on the time there, and I want to do interviews for other films. And, you know, I had some other people, you know, lined up. And, for example, Jeremiah Dirk has been a friend of mine for over 20 years. And I thought, well, this is an interesting guy. I said, I have some empty space. I wonder if he would do an interview with me while I'm out there. So I just turned the camera on and just said, hey, you made music in the past about spiritual warfare. And I just kind of had him tell his story and his testimony. And it's fascinating because none of the people in this film know each other really personally. But the way that it just kind of all weaved together, I really believe it was just God, you know, in the details of putting this together. You know, you mentioned Mark Salinas, who he was actually interviewed in the same room that you were, but I met him in the hallway here at the Watchman. I began talking to him, and I was so impressed by just a little bit of his testimony. And I said, you know what, would you be interested in telling me your testimony on camera and let me put you in the film? Just because I just thought it was so powerful. I could tell this guy was impacted by God and his life was changed. And I wanted to get that on camera. He said, sure, I'll do it because I want people to know Jesus. So he willingly, you know, he gave me his testimony, you know, and you know, just Johanna Michelson, we had a contact through Greg Reed.
Right.
And we, she is just a, you know, a pioneer, you know, in the last 30 years, you know, writing the book, The Beautiful Side of Evil, and just, you know, laying a lot of the groundwork for a lot of us today that are doing stuff, you know, in this arena. And we had the opportunity to do an interview with her, and we didn't know how we were going to use it, but we're like, we just got to take the opportunity and get her in front of the camera because we want the people that will watch this film wouldn't necessarily maybe go read one of her books until maybe they see her. But she has a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience that we want to bring to people that would watch the film maybe because of Derek Gilbert, you know, or one of these other guys, you know, and we just kind of wanted to bring them together. So it was really, you know, and I saw Jay Prince's testimony online, and I reached out to him, and he said, sure, I would be willing to do an interview, and we did, and it was powerful. Every time I did an interview, I was like, wow, this is good, you know, and then I would do another one, and everyone would up, you know, the next one. I thought, wow, I don't know how you're going to do this, Lord, but we're just going to put this together and see what happens. And it's amazing how, even though these people didn't know each other and all of these interviews were done, you know, sometimes a couple months apart, it just kind of fit together.
Mm. Jared, Joanna Michelson, what a great line that we used from the trailer that you guys included in the trailer. This is Rosemary's Baby. What the heck is it doing in your tub? Which was part of a comment that she made, a longer comment about how, as I said, we in the Christian church don't recognize evil when we see it anymore. What was it about her book that convinced you that you needed to try to get in touch with her and get her in this film?
Well, Joanna, when I was a teenager, I had plenty of supernatural, spiritual experiences with, you know, shadow people and the like. And so my mother had actually read that book when she was a teenager, and she said, you know, this woman had seen, you know, some stuff, and this might be an interesting book to you. And so I read it when I was a teenager, and Joanna's book was really the first book that really showed me, okay, maybe I'm not crazy. Other people have experienced some of these things too. You know, I'll rebuke them in Jesus' name. And that was kind of the starting point of me, you know, really starting to engage with the authority that Christ has given me in spiritual warfare. And so I really owe a great debt of gratitude for peace and sanity in my own life that the Lord used Joanna's book, The Beautiful Side of Evil, to benefit me and prosper me in my own growth in development. And so, you know, I'd always thought it would be nice one day if I could personally thank her. And, you know, long story short, life goes on and the Lord is good and all these crazy things happen. And we know one of her good friends, you know, and we're doing stuff with him. And he was in the first film. And yeah, he had given me her phone number. I talked to her on the phone. And before long, we set it up and met her at her house in California and filmed her. And I got to just, you know, it was a bucket list thing for me. I got to sit in front of her and thank her for what she did for me as a teenager. And she didn't even realize. And it's my privilege and pleasure to be able to share her with other people in a new generation that doesn't know who she is.
Now, Tom, how did the message come together on this? Did you come into this film with an idea of where you wanted to take it, or did this sort of develop organically?
It kind of developed organically. I mean, I had a plan. God had a better plan. So
that's usually the way it works.
Yeah. I knew I wanted to get people to talk about spiritual warfare, you know? And I also had an idea because I was going to make a separate film, you know, about abortion. But I thought, man, I really want to try and find a way to work this in there now. And there's my daughter works for a group called Created Equal, and I had a contact of a guy named Seth Dreyer, and I took some interview footage that he had done on the show with us, and then I mixed it with footage of him in Washington D.C. doing pro-life apologetics, just right in the midst of all this craziness and at this feminist march in Washington D.C. And I just thought it went really good, and I kind of was trying to be sneaky about that because a lot of Christians have become desensitized to abortion. You know, I think a lot of us have this attitude, well, it's legal, so there's not much we can do about it, so I'm just not going to do much about it. And I thought this message is so important that we need to stand up for the unborn, and we need to fight this, and we need to know how to defend them. And I wanted to put that in there as one of the battlefronts, you know, that we need to fight. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that could be said about that when we talk about the bloodshed and, you know, all of that. And it's more than a physical war. It's obviously a spiritual war. And I mean, we've especially learned that in the last couple of weeks. But I wanted to plug that in there and just get people thinking, you know, about something that I kind of think that we've forgotten about.
Well, Jared, let me bring you in on this. I think you're right, Tom. I think a lot of American Christians do consider this the abortion issue kind of settled. But what is it about the abortion issue, Jared, that made you believe, hey, you're right, this is a supernatural, this is a spiritual issue, a key part of this war that we need to include in the film?
Looking at the history in the Old Testament where God prohibited us throwing our own children into the fires to Molech, you know, you see that ritual sacrifice of our children is something that's been here since the beginning, ever since the Watchers descended and began teaching us warfare and occult, ritual occult practices and the worship that demanded blood. You know, that was something that was required. You see this in history. It's why, you know, we act like the powers and principalities that we see in the Old Testament are just somehow a myth, or they're gone now. And what you see is you have new.
We got a drop out there, but
in some places, and you see that child sacrifice is still demanded. You see that in the form of abortion. This is something spiritual because we're willingly handing over our children, even if some of the people that are, committing the willful act of murder of their own child, they claim it's for the benefit of their own sanity or the benefit of that child. It's really a form of, a form of narcissism and blood sacrifice where we're still offering this to spiritual powers and principalities. And I don't see anything more real in spiritual warfare than the willful act of killing our children for whatever reason. It's a horrible practice.
No, you basically laid out one of the major themes that I explore in my new book, Last Clash of the Titans, because you're back to the old gods of the Greeks, Kronos, king of the Titans, who ate his children because of the prophecy from Gaia and Uranus, the sky god, that he'd be overthrown by his children. And for their act of sacrifice, they're now in chains and gloomy darkness, according to Peter and Jude. But still influencing the world today, I think, taking revenge on the human race for the destruction of their children, the Nephilim in the flood of Noah. This is a practice that's been ongoing for thousands of years, and you're right, it's still with us today. One of the interviews I found really interesting was the discussions that you had with J. Brett Prince. This is a fellow who is a tattoo artist who... Tom, talk about why he's in the film and what he brought out that you found so compelling.
Well, J. Brett Prince had a a testimony that went viral online, and I knew a lot of the people that he mentioned in his testimony. I kind of rubbed elbows because I'm from Mansfield, Ohio. It's an hour north of Columbus, and I used to hang out down there. And I thought, wow, this guy, his testimony is, I was just going through and verifying things. I'm like, wow, I know this person, and I'm just like blown away because this guy is what we call a religious Satanist or a LaVeyan type Satanist. Okay. He called himself a Luciferian. And these are the guys that will troll us, that will mock us, that will make fun of us and say Satanism isn't real. People aren't doing that. And here's one that got saved. And I mean, his testimony kind of speaks for itself, but he went looking for the truth, and he realized that the truth was Jesus Christ. And he was like, oh man, he's like, I don't want that to be the truth, because he knew that he had to surrender and he didn't want to. But, he came to a point where, it was around the holidays about 2 years ago, and he got down on his knees and he repented, and he's been a changed man ever since. So I just thought his testimony was so powerful, especially coming from that occultic background. I mean, he was into the left-hand path, dark magic stuff, and he was doing rituals, and he was openly accepted by the Masons. And he took me to the temple, which was hidden in plain sight. I couldn't believe it. It was hidden right next to the Ohio Historical Center, right off of 71 in Columbus, Ohio, in a little village where students from all over Ohio will go. It's called like an Ohio Village, where they dress up, in from 100 years ago, and they show people what life was like 100 years ago. Well, in that village, they have a Masonic temple there, and a lot of people that when they found out that his initiation rituals were gone there, they're like, wow, this is really sacred. You should be real privileged, because they have a lot of artifacts in that place and stuff, just things like that. And when I was interviewing him and talking to him, I was like, wow, it got real for me, because he was explaining the people that he, when they took the blindfold off, who was surrounding him. It wasn't kids that was into heavy metal music. It wasn't, it was these doctors and lawyers and judges, that were, and he didn't say this, but I got the impression that the Masons weren't the only thing that they were involved with. And obviously, he talks about once I got into that organization, everything started to go good for me, business wise.
Well, that's the thing that surprised me was when you see J. Brett Prince in this film. This is a war, and we'll hold this up again so you get a chance to see it. You'll be a little bit surprised. He was a tattoo artist. Is a tattoo artist. He's but he was actually putting occult sigils under his own skin. And
yeah.
Do I remember correctly that the Freemasons reached out to him?
Yeah. He got fascinated with the artwork, and somebody saw the artwork that he was making, and yeah, they did. They reached out to him, and it was kind of a strange thing in his life, and it shows this in the movie. He happened to be living in an apartment building that used to be a Masonic lodge. He was working in a building that used to be an Oddfellows lodge. Huh. So just all of these, we know a lot of times we'll say, wow, God is moving and God is doing this, and the enemy can do the same thing, and he can line things up too. So it's just kind of fascinating how all of these points converged in his life, and he ended up becoming a Mason. But he has since obviously renounced all those vows and prayed over all that stuff and broken all that stuff. But he was serious into it. And one of the things I don't think he might talk about, but he has actually tattooed across his chest, "Do what thou wilt," which is the famous, line from Aleister Crowley. Right.
Jared, you're raised in a family where you were exposed to a lot of this and Christian doctrine very early on. I mean, your dad's a pastor. We were honored to speak at his church for the Sons of God, Giants of Old conference back in August. How much of this surprised you? The stuff that you encountered, the stuff that you heard from the guests in the film.
I would nothing was surprising whatsoever. I mean, this is stuff that Tom and I have worked with and thought about, and it's been a part of our lives for quite some time. But I think sometimes you get tired of talking about it to people. It's nice to have other people out there. Prophet has no honor in his own home, so to speak. It's like some people get tired of hearing you talk about it. It's nice to bring people that are older and wiser and have had a different set of experiences that sort of vindicate our own testimonies by giving their own testimonies, which are virtually identical with different variables. And you can say, see, listen, there are other people out there talking about this, and we want to bring those to the masses to just help wake up the church. The church needs to wake up.
This is something the Barna Group has been pulling out of surveys that's conducted in America here over the last 20 years. But it's really eye-opening when you see it face-to-face and you start talking about things like this with, really loving people in our churches, and their eyes just sort of glaze over. And it's not through any, not that they're being willfully ignorant. It's just that I think, as in my own personal case, just never experience anything like this that's so overt as having the Freemasons reach out and say, hey, we like this art that you're doing, which is based on this occult stuff that you've been studying. We'd like you to join our organization. Or seeing, as in the case of Dr. Greg Reed, the horror of satanic ritual abuse firsthand. I'm thankful, frankly, that God didn't see fit to take me down that path. But I think that's true for most of us. So what is it going to take to shake people awake? Tom, I mean, what is it your hope that this film will be sort of a the ice water wake up call?
Yeah, and the film Detestable was designed to introduce the words satanic ritual abuse into the vocabulary of Christians who've never heard about this. I made that movie, and as intense as it was, I pulled back a lot of stuff, so somebody that's never heard of it before, they could be introduced to it. The same thing with this, it's the whole idea, even with the title, this is a war, and it comes from something I heard Greg Reed say years ago. Some people will say that the Christian life is kind of like a war. No, it's not kind of like a war. It is a war. This is a war, and that's where I got it from. So I think I'm really concerned. I really am, because we are seeing an emergence of what we'll call the left-hand path. Dark magicians are really starting to come out and uncloak, and they're gaining a popularity. It's becoming fashionable. These guys have a lot of charisma, and they're pulling people into this like I've never seen before. And I'm aware of it, but I've become even more aware of it in the last week, where we see that they're just. I was at the mall a couple weeks ago with my wife, and I saw they have a whole clothing line that's run by some left-hand path Luciferian Satanists, and they're trying to make it fashionable to be a Satanist, to be a dark magician. Here in a couple weeks in Columbus, Ohio, they're going to have a dark market where you can go if you are a dark magician and get anything from, you can go see lectures, you can get all kinds of potions, you can get all of the supplies you need. So, I mean, I know this stuff has been out there, and we know all about Wicca and all that stuff, and obviously we know that there's really no difference, witchcraft is witchcraft. But we're seeing the emergence of a group who has an arrogance and who are experiencing power from the dark side, and they're dangerous. And I think if Christians don't take that seriously, they're going to be blindsided by it, because we have, our enemy has the ability on his own to tempt us, But when people come together in agreement to summon a demon and send it against us, that can have an effect on us too. We have to learn how to pray against that, how to protect ourselves, and to do warfare. Russ Dizdar talks about this a lot. That's called cult-level spiritual warfare. And, spiritual warfare, we all know, okay, we get tempted. Jesus showed us how to overcome temptation. He used the word of God against Satan, 40 days in the desert. So there's something else going on here, and we really got to armor up and be prepared. I'm really concerned about what I'm seeing, and it's just, I think it's just getting started.
Well, Tom, I just sent you today that link to the new Kickstarter, yes. Right? Derek, there's a new. I saw this for the first time today. I haven't had a chance to vet it, but I went to Kickstarter. It appears that Kickstarter has hit a new record with one campaign in particular that's a top 20 highest funded. They're selling demon-possessed tarot cards. They're advertising that each and every individual tarot card is possessed by a demon. It increases the ability of the power inside the deck and the person, and it's this is, I mean, for it to hit a top 20 highest funded in Kickstarter, we're talking about demon-possessed tarot cards. This is 2018. Where are we headed?
Well, we're in a very strange place. This week, the former drummer for the backup band for Beyonce basically tried to get a restraining order against Beyonce, claiming that Beyonce Knowles was using high-level witchcraft against people to control the people around her. And of course, the general reaction from the public is, well, that drummer, this young lady is nuts. When satanic ritual abuse first entered the public consciousness back in the late 80s, it was dismissed as satanic panic. It's like that line from Baudelaire that was recycled in the movie The Usual Suspects. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. And so we've got this, I'm looking at this right now on my tablet here, the Demon-Possessed Tarot. They wanted $5,000. They've got $56,000 pledged as of Saturday night. Is it because...
It's amazing. I want to throw in here, I've been down in Columbus the last 2 weeks in a row to support my daughter who does ministry at an abortion clinic. A week ago yesterday, there was a witch coven doing rituals in the parking lot. And I went down yesterday. They were not there, but we had found rune stones all over the ground.
Right. And I'll put if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, by the way, I'm going to put the picture up here on the screen so you can see this. If you're listening to this, you might want to find this on YouTube or take a look at, I know, Jared, you shared this around on Facebook yesterday. I was startled when I saw that. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, that was a video Tom filmed with his phone. It's at our YouTube channel, Through the Black. Okay. I went ahead and sent you the video and a picture. But yeah, absolutely, it is startling because it's open, public. It's unabashed. They're unashamed. We're seeing a public explosion of this. We've all, you and I and people that have worked in this or at least known about it, we've seen this moving around in the shadows, but it seems like there's been a move to make this cool. It's okay to come out, and I was actually startled by the number of people that dismissed it on Tom's Facebook, saying this was nothing to worry about. It's like if this is the response from Christian, there were some that weren't like that, but there were plenty that claim this was nothing to worry about. Go on about your business, nothing to see here. It's like, excuse me, this is a claim for territory. We don't just give our territory to the enemy. We just don't do that without a fight.
Some of those symbols are very, very old, by the way. One of those in particular with the like trapezoidal shape at the bottom, that's the ancient symbol of the goddess Tanit, who was the consort of Baal Haman, the god of the Phoenicians, who demanded child sacrifice at Carthage and at Sardinia. In fact, we saw one of the Tophets of the Phoenicians when we were on Sardinia at the ancient city of Taros, where some 900 children had been excavated, the remains of 900 children have been excavated dating back to the time of the Judges. So we're talking 12th, 13th century BC, and if I remember the academic paper that I read about the dig, over 85% of the remains of those children were infants who were under the age of like 6 to 9 months old, and they did not die of natural causes. So, that's a symbol that is still being used today by the occult and others that again, it's to my area of expertise, but I recognized a couple of others that go back go back to ancient Mesopotamia. Again, I just have to wonder, what is it going to take when you get something like this that's so in your face, and the church is like, well, come on, they're just play acting. This isn't real. What's it going to take for Christians in America? I mean, Christians overseas, like the Africans, they recognize it because they see the animist religion and the spirits working around them all the time. Our friend Reverend Dr. Robert Bennett wrote his first book about that, I Am Not Afraid. about the reality of demon possession and exorcism in Madagascar. They see it, so they recognize it when they see it. We here in America, we stopped believing in that, and we discovered what? Psychology, it's amazing. What is it going to take?
That example that you give and you talked about, and I remember when you interviewed him on your show, and it was amazing. And I've seen the same thing in a church that I used to go to, where I'm a protege of Russ Dizdar, and people even at my church knew. Okay, they were afraid of me, and I don't even, I'm the good guy, but they didn't. They were afraid I was going to talk to them about what I do, and we would have missionaries from our church from Vietnam, come over and explain what they were dealing with in Vietnam. And it was in the same denomination, but, in a third world country or in a situation where they just relied on the Bible. They found somebody who had been locked up for a while, and they thought she was crazy. And they were like, well, what does the Bible say? The Bible says, okay, we can do this. So they cast the demon out, and the lady was fine. And they're sitting there telling this in front of our congregation, but the Americanized, and I'll use a word that our friend Guy used, milquetoast Christian, does it. They just don't get it. It's just like, no, this is only in the movies. No, or I'm scared to death of it. I don't want to touch it. And I get that. I understand if you're afraid. I'm not mad at you. I used to be afraid of it. But get over the fear and just, the Bible says that Jesus said, I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions. Nothing will harm you. Okay? And it might take some experience to get over that fear. That's okay. But start working on it. Start doing something, because if you don't, probably nobody else will.
Mm-hmm. Or as our friend Coach Dave Daubenmeyer says, hit somebody. It doesn't matter. Leonard, hit somebody. Jared, one of the interesting things, because this is even beyond that. It's beyond the point of just not recognizing the evil when we see it anymore. It's about openly accepting it in the church, and that was something that Joanna Michelson talked about, Jared. What are some examples of how occultism is actually coming into the church?
Eastern mysticism, I think, in worship, you see a trend towards mantras in our songs. You see a trend towards this idea of, almost, it drives me crazy, and this is highly controversial to some people, so you'll have to forgive me. I don't mean to trigger or start an argument, but I just see an elevation of men in our worship and the theology, and a downplaying of God's work in our lives. It seems to be an overall trend that is always marks. The New Age doesn't necessarily have to be communicating with the Palladians. Anytime we're elevating a sort of a man-centric theology, a man-centric position, the New Age creeps in, because ultimately the heart of Gnosticism was, ye shall be as gods, that you are good, that we are all gods. That there's this subtle creeping in that seems to twist and warp and distort the scriptures and promote truths that aren't scriptural, promote a version of God that's not God, promote a version of Jesus that's not Jesus. There seems to be a sort of mystical and Eastern, mystic slant to it that we would largely regard as the New Age, and that's taken lots of fun. I went to a service that was it was a multi-denominational worship meeting several years ago, and one of the ministers stood up and started ringing a bell for our lost loved ones in the style of the Tibetan monks. You can still probably find my fingerprints in the chair in front of me, because here is. I almost stood up, Derek. I was seething and rebuked this minister in front of 300 people. I was beside myself, and that is one of 100 experiences I have where something ridiculous is happening in front of the church body and people don't care. No one else seemed to mind that night.
Yeah, it's one of the things that Joanna talked about or touched on in the film in the interview was the practice of yoga, which is Hindu religion, Hindu mysticism, which I just got another reminder of that today. We live out here in Podunk, Missouri, in the heart of the Ozarks, and went to a little local festival today in a town of less than 5,000 people. And right there in the parade, right in between all of the cars from the local, Shriners, was this little wagon being pulled with signs on the side saying, yoga with, and this sweet lady looks like she's 75 years old, just waving to all the people along the route, come to my yoga class. And again, this is in the heart of probably one of the most religiously Christian areas in the country. Springfield, Missouri, we're in that general area, is, if there's a buckle to the Bible Belt in America, Springfield, Missouri is it. And yet, right here, we've got people thinking nothing of bringing yoga class into church and into church-sponsored facilities because that's just good exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody was more obsessed with yoga than certain sects within the Nazi Party. When you look at the Nazis and their obsession with the Eastern mysticism that came out of the Hindu culture that preserved the idea of their Aryan forebears, they were looking to this idea of harnessing spiritual energy. They called it vril and volk, the two terms for it. They believe that certain spiritual practices like yoga would allow us to harness energy that would then be able to be used and applied in our daily lives to exert our will on reality. This was something, I think the Nazis are the most perfect modern example of adopting this, and you see a lot of what we're dealing with today. It actually stems from the occultism in the Nazi Party spilling over. Even to this day, some of that influence is hard felt. And I think when people, if they do their due diligence and they actually research instead of just operating on chasing their emotions or Jiminy Cricket theology where we only rely on our conscience and nothing else, they wouldn't get so swept up in the deception that's so, I'm easily deceived. I know that. And that's why I'm always on guard. I want more people to realize that humanity is easy to fool. So we might be a little more skeptical and do our due diligence in vetting these things and looking at the research and the history to make a better and more educated decision.
Now, Tom, as we turn attention from the warning to how then we apply this warning and make good use of this, as with the film, your prior film, Detestable, this can really shake people up when they see how entrenched this is, how far these inroads have been made into the church, how blind the American church is to some of these practices. What do we do with this information? I mean, this is a question that we heard at the recent True Legends conference on transhumanism. This is all really good information. This is shaking me up. I didn't realize this, but now what do I do? What do I do after I watch This Is a War?
I talk about this all the time on my show, and I challenge people to get in the fight, get in the game. We can't do anything on the sidelines. I don't know what your skill set is. I don't know where you came from. I don't know. I can't tell you what God's calling you to do. But, teach yourself to hear the voice of God. And I challenge people, get into the Word. Not everybody can do what we do. Not everybody's called to do what we do, but just do your part. I'm here in Ohio, Jared's in Texas, and we're doing our part. And I hear from people all the time, and they sound off around the world. Hey, I'm doing my part here, Tom. I'm in Australia. I'm in Canada. I'm in wherever in the United States, and people are doing their part. And that's what we're challenging them to do. I had a friend of mine recently that started doing film. And he said, you inspired me to make film. And I was like, praise God, I didn't know. That's great. I want people to do their part. If we had 100 people tomorrow start making films, Christian films, it wouldn't be enough. It really wouldn't. So understand that we are living in a war. That's the idea behind the film. Get there. That's the foundation. And dig into God's Word. How do we do it? We arm ourselves with God's Word, with the full armor of God, with the shield of faith, all these things, and in prayer, obviously interceding and calling on God to just to intervene in our behalf, is one of the most powerful thing that we can do, we're just constantly challenging people to do this. And I'm amazed. I get discouraged because I see what the dark side's doing, and I see a lot of inactivity But I'm also, I get really encouraged because I see so many people stepping up, and I'm hearing so many stories of, hey, we're going to sell. I mean, this is extreme, but, I got a letter in the last couple of weeks where somebody saw our movie from Gons, from Canary Cry, and then it changed their life, and they began to study, and they're selling all their stuff, and they're going to rescue people that are involved in SRA. So whatever it is, find a way to get involved. I don't know what your gift is. You might be a singer, you might be a teacher. Just get involved and teach other people and fight.
Jared, where do people see the movie, This Is a War?
You can go to Vimeo.com and type in This Is a War. It's available there for rent and for purchase. You can also go to our website, Through the Black. We have hard copies available to sell. This day and age, a lot of people just prefer seeing it digitally. But we do have hard copies. We also have an extended bonus disc that has the extended interviews. We couldn't compress these amazing interviews, all of them, into, a 10-hour film. We had to do a 2-hour film, so we made the extended interviews available. That's also for sale. If people really enjoy those interviews, they can get the extended bonus disc. But yeah, Vimeo.com, our website, Through the Black, and then throughtheblack.com, and then we've got our YouTube channel that's got links all over some of the videos where we do shows weekly, and we talk about a lot of this stuff and have our own guests on, including yourself at times, and so that's where we're at.
All right, throughtheblack.com, and I'll put a link to that, the website, the YouTube channel, and also the Vimeo site for the film. This Is a War, about 2 hours, but 2 hours very well spent in understanding what's going on as far as the nature of the conflict in which we are deployed, whether we realize it or not. The filmmakers, director Tom Dunn, producer Jared Chrestman, fellows, appreciate your time and excellent work. And again, thank you. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you so much.
Again, check the notes, whether you were listening at vftb.net, Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, or wherever fine podcasts are sold, or if you're watching this at the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Derek-Gilbert. You'll see the links to all of the sites, throughtheblack.com, and where you can watch and or purchase the film This Is a War, here in the notes below this video. Well worth watching, and I'm not saying this because I was in it, or I am in the film, but the testimony of those who are right on the front line: Joanna Michelson, J. Brett Prince, Jeremiah Dirt, Seth Dreyer, Matt Mraz, Mark Salinas. Very important, and a wake-up call to the church in America, which is essentially asleep at the switch. And, again, just to be included as part of the group that trying to communicate that message was truly an honor. Well, we are... I guess we could say we're through the busiest part of our schedule for 2018, but we still would like to see you in Pennsylvania. We've got one more trip scheduled for this year. We will be going to Gettysburg, Sharon and I, along with our colleague from Skywatch TV, Josh Peck, October 18th through the 20th. The beautiful Wyndham Hotel in Gettysburg is the site for the East Coast Prophecy Conference. That's coming up, again, October 18th. This is a Thursday through Saturday conference. Conference ends at noon Saturday, so we can all get back home and to church on Sunday morning. And of course, some of the folks speaking at the conference will be in the pulpit on Sunday morning, so they need to get back home. But we are honored to be a part of it. I'll be giving a couple of talks. Josh Peck will be talking twice, and we're looking forward to meeting as many of you as we possibly can at this conference. Our friends at Southwest Radio Ministries are putting it on, Dr. Bob Glaze and Dr. Larry Spargimino. Stephen Strang, one of the other featured speakers there, he's the author of God and Donald Trump, and you still have time to sign up if you're interested in going. You've got the time, and looking for a drive into the beautiful Pennsylvania countryside at a time when the leaves probably be at or maybe just past peak color. Should be really something. Again, October 18th through the 20th. The website for registration is swrc.com. That's swrc.com. You'll find a link at vftb.net as well in the right-hand column. And click the link there. That'll take you to the website for more information. And hopefully we can see you there. And if you've got some travel time, some vacation time saved up for next spring, then we would love to see you in Israel. The Skywatch TV Wars of the Gods Tour of Israel next May 12th through 23rd. This is a tour that features Well, so this will essentially be like a rolling conference through the Holy Land. Pastor Carl Gallups, the best-selling author of The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, Gods and Thrones, Gods of Ground Zero, will be joining us. Rabbi Zev Porat, Messianic Rabbi from Tel Aviv, will be joining us. Our colleagues from Skywatch TV, Justin Fall and Wes Fall, as soon as they get their passports, guys, get on this. We will be taking you to places like Mount Hermon, the Grotto of Pan, Banias. We'll show you the Valley of Elah, where David took on Goliath and won. Maybe if we've got time, we'll do what we did this year and stop at the brook there and collect some smooth stones to pass out on the buses. So some great stuff, great food, great teachings. Of course, we'll see Jerusalem and all of the important archaeological and historic sites in and around the city, the Mount of Olives, the Garden of Gethsemane, and so forth. This will be an awesome trip. Masada, I haven't talked much about that. The Dead Sea. You can go into the Dead Sea if you like. And then if you got a few extra days, stay with us as we go over to Jordan, and we'll see Mount Nebo, where Moses got his only look at the Holy Land. We will visit Petra, one of the wonders of the world, an amazing place. And we'll do a little more talking and teaching about those jinn blocks, as in genie, jinn blocks, and some of the gods worshipped by the Nabateans at Petra, which should dovetail with my book that I'm working on now, the next book. Not the new book, but the next book. They'll keep that one under wraps until we're getting ready to talk about that. Anyway, May 12th through 23rd, the Skywatch TV Wars of the Gods Tour of Israel. For information and to reserve your place on the bus, don't wait. Filling up, lipkintours.com. That's lipkintours.com. And we've got some other things that are already popping up onto the calendar for 2019. So we will tell you about those as we get closer to those and as things firm up. But other conferences, if anything, it looks like 2019 is going to be an even busier year, and we are grateful for that. I am finding that I actually enjoy getting up in front of a crowd and speaking. And by the way, I should point out that the job that Sharon did at the True Legends Conference this past weekend, amazing. Standing ovation for my wife as she opened up the conference on Friday morning. Deservedly so. She says that I'm the preacher and she's the teacher, like in a classroom setting, but the Spirit was on her. And if you were there or if you watched the live stream, you know what I'm talking about. It was powerful stuff. And you know, she's getting high praise when a world-renowned expert in artificial intelligence, Dr. Hugo de Garis, comes away from the talk saying, I didn't know some of this stuff that she was bringing out in her talk. I sat next to Doug Hagman of the Hagman Report. I sat next to Doug and Joe for some of the time, and I snuck around backstage so I could be there when she came off. But Doug Hagman was sitting there with his iPhone. He kept pulling it out of his pocket and opening his notes app so that he could write down notes to research from things that Sharon was talking about. So, yeah, she did really well. And there's still time for you to go to the gen6.com website and, of course, order the DVD set so that you can see the presentation. All of them were really powerful. Timothy Alberino, he is so passionate when he speaks. Very impressive young man. Richard Dolan, Dr. Hugo de Garis, who was so nervous when he went out there to talk. Again, this guy with a worldwide reputation, but had never spoken in front of a crowd that big before. But by the time he was done, he had the crowd eating out of his hand and delivering some powerful information. And Steve Quayle, I mean, what can you say about Steve Quayle? You can't stop him. You can only hope to slow him down. That was my job. And judge for yourself how well I did. Gen6.com if you want to get your DVD set, because the information needs to get into the church. The transhumanism movement is a new religion, and most of us in the church don't even know what the word means. Gen6.com, GENSIX.com. We're back to our weekly Bible study, Gilbert House Fellowship, gilberthouse.org. Please log on there. We've got free archives going all the way back to Genesis 1:1, and please give View from the Bunker a review, whether you're listening at Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or the iTunes podcast store. give us a like, give us a thumbs up at Facebook as well, facebook.com/viewfromthebunker, which is a production of Gilbert House and released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. The opening theme is by Kevin MacLeod, and our announcer is D.C. Good. Remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.